After not even dressing for Chelsea over the weekend, Raheem Sterling and his team have let it be known that he is willing to explore some transfer options. We've got a couple weeks left in the market for him to find a new home, but that question of where should he go is not as easy to answer as you might think. But then again, it only takes one spot. We're going to take a look at what the best options for Raheem Sterling are next on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. So it looks like Raheem Sterling's time at Stamford Bridge may be coming to an end. By not even dressing over the weekend for their opening game against Manchester City, Chelsea pretty much gave him all the signs he needed that he is not going to be a part of their plans. Now, they have not gone so far as to push Sterling out the way they have with Conor Gallagher and Trevor Chalobah and others, but by not even dressing him, the writing is on the wall, and clearly Sterling thought the same thing, and his team released a statement basically saying, I'm open to a transfer, and that he did not expect this, and that this was very surprising to him. And you can question whether or not that was the right idea to make that statement, but for another club, maybe you don't. But for Chelsea, where is the loyalty? Why should a player be loyal? There's no loyalty coming from the club to the players, so why should the players return any of those favors? So Raheem Sterling is looking for an opportunity, and we're going to talk about where he might end up. Before we get too far down this rabbit hole, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. Get in that comment section. Where would you like to see Raheem Sterling end up? Would you want him on your club if you are not a Chelsea fan? And if you are a Chelsea fan, do you want to see him go and play some of these other options, or should they be holding on to him? Get down in that comment section. Let me know your thoughts. You can also leave some comments on Twitter at Pitchside Pub, and check out the website pitchsidepub.com where you can sign up for our free newsletter. So Raheem Sterling wants to play. Everybody wants to play, but for him it's especially important because he is reaching the back half of his career, and as of right now, he is not in the mix for a spot on the England roster. He was not, on the Euros roster. He's on the outside looking in. So he needs to play and play regularly to show that he can get back to being that goal-scoring threat he was when he was with Manchester City, and during that time was an automatic inclusion in the England roster and was typically a starter on the left wing for them. And so that's probably his goal, is to get back to playing every day and getting himself back on that England roster. It's probably to go to a successful club and win more trophies, but he's done that. Let's face it, he has done that with Manchester City. I'm guessing, without any actual inside knowledge, that Raheem Sterling's focus is getting back on that England squad for the World Cup in 2026. And if that is his goal, he needs to play, and he needs to play every day. So that has to be a major factor in where he's going to go. Now, he might even be willing, again, with no inside information, he might even be willing to take a pay cut to make that happen. Because let's face it, Raheem Sterling has made plenty of money, and his wages are high at Chelsea, and that does get in the way of a lot of transfers. So he may be willing to take a pay cut if it means getting to play again and working his way back into that peak form that he does and should still have a few good years left. And he has proven to be a good goal scorer. Maybe not the dynamic threat everybody once thought he was going to be when he was a young up-and-coming player, but obviously a very good player on the international stage, and the kind of guy who can be an everyday player on both prime international teams and prime Premier League winning clubs, as we saw with City. So he's going to want to play, and that's a key factor. In fact, it's probably the only real factor in trying to figure out where he's going to go. Now, he doesn't have to stay in England. I would guess, as an English player, he would like to stay in the Premier League, but that's not necessarily a requirement, although I think other Premier League clubs would be the leaders in the clubhouse in terms of getting his services. But when we look around the rest of Europe, there could be some landing spots for him. In the Bundesliga, he knows Vincent Kompany very well. He played with Vincent Kompany, so Bayern could be a landing spot, but they probably don't have the playing time for him. They are very, very deep at the wings. They just signed Michael Olise for a lot of money. They still have Leroy Sané. Kingsley Coman is still on this club. I mean, they have some depth there, so that probably doesn't guarantee him playing time. Would he drop down to a Dortmund? Probably not. Bayer Leverkusen doesn't really play with wings, so the Bundesliga is not looking like a great option, although I could see if there was a little bit of that connection with Vincent Kompany that drew him there. La Liga, most of those clubs don't have enough money, right? Real Madrid, does, but he's not going there. They're already as deep as they come, and they probably wouldn't even be interested. Atletico Madrid has spent all of their money. They're probably not interested. Barcelona doesn't have any. They would love to take him, I'm sure, if they could get him for free, but that's not an option. So La Liga's probably out too. Everybody below them probably doesn't have enough money for Sterling, who will probably go in the 20 to 30 million euro range. Does that seem about right? There haven't been any reports on what Chelsea would want from him. They paid a lot more than that when they bought him, but at this point they'd probably take anything they could get to cut their losses and balance the books a little bit. Get in that comment section. What do you think Sterling should be going for? I'm guessing somewhere in the 20 to 25 million euro range would be my guess, but get down in that comment section and let me know your thoughts. So nobody in the Bundesliga, nobody in La Liga. He's not going to go to France. What about Serie A? That's interesting because a lot of the top teams in Serie A don't really play with true wingers. Inter Milan does not. Atalanta does not. AC Milan does, but they don't need him. They have Rafael Leao, Samuel Chukwueze, and to the point where they've pushed Pulisic in as a number 10. So they're playing that 4-2-3-1, and their front four is pretty well set. So I don't see them being interested. One possibility overseas, and this may be the only overseas possibility I would say has a chance, would be Juventus, who does play with three up front and is sort of using some inexperienced or converted strikers out on the wing. They don't have a lot of depth there. The guys they started in their first match are about it in terms of depth there. So that could be a possibility. Now, I don't know that they have the money to go out and get a 30 million euro transfer fee to actually pay that right now. But at least in terms of the fit on the roster and the playing style and the depth, possibly Juventus. We'll call that a maybe for now, although I wouldn't put my money on that being his destination. So while I don't think that England is necessarily, or an English team is necessarily a prerequisite for his move, it does appear just from a fit standpoint, not to mention him being a Brit and knowing the league and having played in it for a decade, it does look like he's going to end up in a Premier League uniform in somebody else's stadium. So maybe Juventus, but probably Premier League teams. Now, where does he end up? Which clubs can offer him what he wants in terms of playing time, but also a competitive atmosphere? Because we can rule out the bottom of the table. You know, Ipswich, Leicester, Southampton, Everton, Wolves, Forest, Brentford. You can probably rule them out because they're going to be in the thick of that relegation battle. And even if they have the money and the playing time, he probably just doesn't have much interest in taking that much of a step down just to get playing time. I could be wrong, but I don't see that happening to jump all the way down to the bottom of the table there in the clubs that are really going to be fighting tooth and nail. I think we can say the same thing about the top. He's not going to City, Arsenal, Liverpool, probably not Manchester United, probably not Tottenham. Those clubs, the biggest clubs, probably don't have the space for him. He would not be a significant player in terms of playing time for them. He'd be more of a depth piece at any one of those clubs. Got a lot of talented wingers on across the board on those clubs, and I just don't see where he's playing. So he does have that familiarity with Mikel Arteta, so I guess Arsenal could be a possibility, but I don't see that happening, in terms of him going and being a focal point. So you've got sort of the mid-table teams that are some of the best options, and one of them could be Newcastle. Newcastle has as talent and is good and should be very competitive this year, but they don't have a lot of depth at the wings. Now they have Anthony Gordon on the left, but Sterling can play on the right as well, so that's a possibility there. And I tell you what, a front three of Alexander Isak, Anthony Gordon, and Raheem Sterling could move the needle a little bit. So I could see Newcastle doing it. Now, we don't know what their financial situation is. If they were to sell Anthony Gordon, they would definitely have some interest in a player like Sterling, who they could just slot right in, and he'd be a step down from Gordon right now, as evidenced by the fact that Gordon basically took his spot on the England national team. But I could see that being a possibility. Another one is Crystal Palace. Now, Palace under Oliver Glasner doesn't use traditional wings. They play that 3-4-2-1, but Sterling could slide in there next to Eze and really be potent on that left attacking mid spot that they use, and I think he would be an improvement over a Daichi Kamada, who got the start in the first game for them, and so he could provide them with some real depth and real possible talent there. Another option is Fulham, which seems to be, and this one's a little outside the box, but Fulham seems to be the team that is willing to take on players who don't have a home or don't have playing time. They did it with Emile Smith-Rowe. I think Fulham could offer some real opportunities for Sterling. In their first game, they played a 4-2-3-1, and they've got Adama Traore out there. They've got Iwobi out there. I could see him taking some playing time from either of those guys, and maybe it's a rotation where the three of them take two of the three of them take those two spots in any game. But there would be plenty of playing time there for Raheem Sterling. He could even fill in for Muniz as the striker at times. I don't know. I think that's an outside the box one, and they have been willing to take these players like Smith-Rowe who aren't getting the playing time they need elsewhere and really, give them that playing time. And that's what he's looking for. Now, they're not going to compete for a title, but adding a player like Raheem Sterling could, really help solidify them as not in that relegation battle. I don't think they will be. I think Fulham has done enough to be firmly mid-table, but if they have the money, and I don't know exactly what their financial situation is in terms of, PSR and having more to work with, but I could see that being a real landing spot. So, I've sort of narrowed it down to Newcastle, Crystal Palace, and Fulham in the Premier League, with Juventus having an outside shot in terms of where Sterling could go. I would like to see him move. I don't think he's in a good spot at Chelsea. I don't think anybody at Chelsea is in a good spot. I think Chelsea's a disaster right now, but it has been made very clear by them that he is not a part of their plans. And the only way he's going to get significant playing time this year is if the injury bug hits them again and they have no choice but to turn to him. And that is not what Raheem Sterling wants, and that is not what he deserves. He is too accomplished of a player to be in that role. So I would love to see him move. He's got a couple weeks, and I've picked a couple clubs that I think he could end up at. What do you think? Get down in that comment section. Let me know your thoughts on Newcastle, Palace, Fulham, any others that you think he could end up at. There are some other options that I didn't cover, but those are the ones that I think make the most sense with the outside shot at Juventus. Get down to that comment section. Let me know your thoughts of where you think Sterling should go and will go. You can also leave comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub. While you're at it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel and check out our website, pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here at Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.